Driver is down. Driver is down.
Smoking, you guys.
3 down.
Bradley just got nailed by a HAT. Good hit.
Good hit. Keep that radio coming. Yep.
Squad is my most played ever first-person shooter of any platform. It's the most hours I've achieved in any given game, and it's because Squad is a very special title. But it had a very rough 2021 and an unfortunate delay in content, which meant that Squad's been on a bit of a downturn recently. It has a super engaged community, there's lots of people who want to play this game, it even attracted huge large name streamers who were covering the title for a while after its formal official release, but it's all dropped off since then. And 2022 is a big year for Squad because so much needs to be done and so much hasn't been done. Now, Squad is by no means dead, and it's worth kicking off this video by saying that this is a game which has a really great engaged core community that is constantly producing modding based content for it and trying to push this game into healthier directions. The issue that Squad faced in 2021 was promising far too much and not delivering. In 2021, we were hoping to see the Australian faction, US Marine Corps and Pan-Asian faction, as well as amphibious vehicles, and we got absolutely none of that. They released update version 2.9 in June, version 2.10 in July, and have been testing version 2.12 up until now, I believe. And finally they're on version 2.11 in August, but ultimately the game hadn't seen any content, and whilst quality of life continued to improve and the game is, generally speaking, in a pretty decent state, there has been no new content for Squad for a very, very long time. And it all comes down to one thing called technical debt. Now, when you're developing a game, sometimes it doesn't work as you want it to work. You know, you might think to yourself, well, if I'm going to create a bunch of pancakes, all I need is the mixture, a frying pan, and a little bit of butter or oil or whatever you so happen to use. And you would be correct, but in video game development, maybe instead of a frying pan, they had to use a metal plate or something, and rather than a spatula, they had to flip it with their hands, and that's pretty much the analogy for video game development. Although it seems fairly simple and putting different components together makes things work, that's not really the case. And with a game like Squad, which has a fully fleshed out ballistic system, aerial control system, fully fleshed out server system with 100 players, admin cam, admin controls, recording feedback system, it's pretty intense, and getting a lot of this stuff to work probably took a lot of messing around with code and trying to get things to work in certain ways, and thus you get technical debt. And technical debt is basically every time you approach something and have to use a sort of rudimentary procedure to fix or make it happen, at some point you might have to go back and change that rudimentary fix, because otherwise the game might not be able to have new content or progression or changes. A big part of this, for example, is the fact that Squad has been progressively decoupling its modes, maps, and layouts. Previously in Squad, if you wanted to play a certain map, a certain mode with certain factions, that wasn't possible, because all of the layouts, the factions that were involved, and the layouts within the maps on the objectives were predetermined, and that was something that they had to get rid of and completely decouple from their coding system in order to make it a reality that you could have, for example, the US versus Canada, if you so wanted to, or Britain versus Canada in a good old-fashioned Commonwealth showdown. However you want it to work, you could get it to work that way. And this is just one of the many systems inside Squad that had to be redone, reshaped, and redesigned in order for things to work. But as with some of its other titles like Postscriptum, and even Beyond the Wire, which were all published by OWI, there's been a content hiatus, with definitely Beyond the Wire seeing the most content in 2021 because the game is very early into early access, but games like Postscriptum and Squad seem to have just fallen flat on its face. And it's a shame too, because Squad was at this point where it almost had the FPS industry by the scruff of its neck. It was starting to get some very serious attention from a wider audience beyond the base core community. You have to bear in mind, Squad is a niche hardcore shooters, and hardcore shooters aren't necessarily popular titles. But this is a game that's not only sold incredibly well, it's managed to sell well enough that it's very positively rated on Steam, has lots and lots of players all the time, and you'll never struggle to find a game of Squad online at any given point of the day. Now in 2022, this game needs to be doing better, because the horizon for Squad is so bright. With new players, new content, new factions, new updates, it could very much assert itself as the #1 FPS title to play in 2022. Call of Duty had a bad year, Battlefield had a bad year, Hell Let Loose had a pretty decent year, but everywhere else people are kind of stumbling around the industry. And there's a really good opportunity here for Squad in 2022 to release a boatload of content and make the game the most appealing first-person shooter on the market. It already is in many ways. Squad has one of the best sound systems of any game, one of the best teamwork systems, some of the best armor systems. It's just a fantastic FPS title. When you haven't played Squad, or if you haven't gotten around to it, I highly recommend you do. I always say to people, it takes one good game of Squad with one decent squad leader, and you understand the reason why people clock thousands of hours in this title. Because the gameplay experiences you have are unlike anything else. The intensity, the teamwork, the sheer intensity of everything going on around you is next level stuff. It could be a pretty massive year for Squad as well. Now for those of you unaware, Squad has recently allowed modding SDKs into its official server browser, meaning that you're getting different factions, different modded weaponry, and some mods like the Middle East Escalation mod just flat out coming out of nowhere and being really popular. And it's the kind of thing that supplements Squad and has kept it alive in 2021 going into 2022. The modding community deserves a lot of respect for keeping things interesting, as well as the individual communities that make up Squad. Now, in 2022, Squad could be releasing the Australian faction, which they bought off of a team of modders and polished up, the US Marine Corps faction, which features amphibious vehicles, and the Pan-Asian faction as well, alongside a huge amount of modding, lots of different content and potentially maps as well, and of course quality of life improvements that continue to make Squad a better title. Now, the good news about technical debt is that once it's been dealt with, traditionally it's dealt with, and it means that you've decoupled a lot of systems, made systems more streamlined and optimized, and effectively opened doorways for content to be added in more quicker successions. And it's great, because Squad is a title that deserves this much attention. It deserves these new factions, these new maps. It deserves as much effort as OWI can get it, because it is a fantastic game. There are no other shooters out there right now that have the overwhelming positive feedback and sentiment of the Squad community, the reviews that Squad has, or offer anything of the kind of unique experiences that you can get in a game like Squad. I hope in the not too distant future, I'm talking about a Squad with multiple factions, lots of fantastic mods going for it, and maybe even pushing 150 to 200 players. Some of those are more realistic than others, but it's just the possibilities for this title. Because Squad has inadvertently created a sandbox military experience environment that people can just chop and change and do whatever they want with, and create unique experiences inside of it. The Middle East Escalation mod I mentioned wasn't hugely popular initially, but just gained so much attention because, well, it's not doing anything special, but it's offering people an experience they want. The Middle East Escalation mod kind of is a sort of Gulf War style scenario where you've got these individual factions of AK-47s fighting against each other, sometimes special forces as well, and it just creates these experiences that can be played out within Squad, and in the future where you can have games that are like 80 versus 20 or like 60 versus 40, things can only continue to get better for this game. The core framework for Squad, the audio, the ballistics, the gunplay, the performance, it's all there for this game, and 2022 needs to be a big year for it. So folks, let me know what you think in the comment section below. Are you still excited for Squad in 2022, and what do you want to see next? As always, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in another video.